My name is Laurel Osfield. I'm from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and we're here today to talk about infrastructure and tourism, a very important component to supporting the tourism industry. And I'm very happy to be welcoming two excellent speakers who are going to join me in today's discussion. So first, I'd like to introduce Abdulbar Mansoor. He is the CEO of ITDC out of Indonesia. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to welcome Rajat Misra. He's the Director General for Operations at AIIB based in Beijing. Welcome, Rajat.
Thanks, Laura.
So let's get our discussion going, and let's talk a little bit about the most obvious impact that's facing the tourism industry, which is COVID-19. It's been highly disrupted. Obviously, as we all know, it's lasted a lot longer than any of us thought or hoped or wanted it to be. And the truth of the matter is we're still not out of the woods. So maybe we'll put the question first to you, Abdulbar, and then Rajat, would love to hear from you afterwards. But from your respective roles, what steps are you taking to stabilize the tourism industry, not only so that it can manage through this unsteady time, but also come out ahead going forward?
Thanks for the question, Laura. Hi, Rajat. Yeah. To respond to your question about what step are we taking to stabilize the tourism industry, first of all, we realize that this is not a short-term situation, that it is ongoing right now, and we hope that we'll see the end of it soon. But having said that, we have to, first of all, ensure from my side, because we build, manage, and operate tourism destinations, of which one in Bali and one under construction using AIIB facility. We really have to make sure that the tourism complex that we develop and we're building are COVID-free. Now, when we say tourism destination, we mean that the one that we have in Nusa Dua, where it is has a perimeter, it has 3 secure locations to enter, which now we reduce to only 1. Yeah. So what we do is we have to secure the perimeter. We have to secure the tourism complex so that anybody who comes in will be well monitored and also within the guidelines of the maximum number of audience. And the second thing is that we have to make sure, and we've just finished doing this, that we comply with the government standard of CHSE, or Cleanliness, Health, Safety, and Environmental Concern, which is issued by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. And last time I checked, we have 29 tenants, of which there are 20 hotels. All of them have been certified. So we can claim that all the hotels are complying with the government regulation for cleanliness, health, safety, and environment. The third thing is that we have to implement the measures of health protocols for all our visitors and also our employee. And this is done by our own operation or our managing director under his own team, so that we make sure that everything is implemented. Just as you know, we call it the 3M. So, social distancing, and then washing hands, and then lesser crowd. And the last thing is that we have to provide the vaccination, because we think that that's the ultimate in ensuring that we can stabilize. And we're glad to report that we finished the vaccination for all 8,672 employees who are working in the Nusa Dua, working for the 20 hotels and the golf course and the hospital and the museum. So it's the first of its kind in Indonesia, where we have a certain area of tourism all already vaccinated. And I think this is the steps that we have to monitor while we have to go on with the current situation. But I think it's the last measure that we have to do. Thank you.
Obviously, a lot of work being done, a lot of changes in the way that your staff are operating, the way you're welcoming guests. And this is not, this isn't going to end anytime soon. I think a lot of people are recognizing that going forward, it's going to change the face of tourism and the way that visitors move from country to country, the way staff engaged with are going to engage with your visitors. This is we're going to see a new approach. Well, for Rajat, I mean, here you're an Asian infrastructure investment bank. How does infrastructure play, and a bank like AIB? What's the role that the bank plays when it comes to helping the tourism industry manage through this crisis?
Yes, thanks, Laurel. This has been an unprecedented crisis in the last few years. And we had, as AIB, we had been helping develop tourism infrastructure in many of our members. And Indonesia was one of them. We have a program in Maldives as well, and some other countries. And we recognize the importance of tourism in these countries. It's a labor-intensive industry, gives employment to a lot of local people, including women. In many countries, it contributes significantly to GDP, it earns foreign exchange. So it has a significant multiplier effect on the economy, and that is what our programs aim at. Now, with this crisis, there are countries that were significantly affected overall economically, as also specifically tourism, which along with civil aviation has probably been the hardest hit sectors. And recognizing this, the bank rolled out a COVID relief facility last year, aggregating about $13 billion to help our member state cope with this crisis, which included emergency healthcare, stepping up the healthcare facilities, equipment, refurbishing of hospitals, testing facilities, PP kits, etc., as also budgetary support to members that required it. And in that respect, for example, if you look at some countries that were severely affected, like say Maldives, which depends on more than 50% of its foreign exchange earnings come from tourism, and it was quite badly hit. So we put in a program for health support, which will augment the the testing system across islands, and also provide greater medical facilities. And so that's the short-term measure. In the long term, I think the solution lies in putting together facilities that are more green, that are aligned to our goals, and that will be able to attract people to come there. And similarly, going back to the example of Maldives, we are, for example, helping them in setting up waste to energy plant that will help dispose of waste that is right now burned in the open, which leads to significant air pollution, as also the facilities that we are helping co-finance will also be able to handle medical waste. So these are some of the steps we are taking in the long term to address the situation. And as the economies open up, there will be, a lot of people are expecting that there may be sort of revenge travel, so to say, that a lot of these places will see greater influx of tourism. And we just have to ensure that the infrastructure we help develop are able to cope up with that and are aligned with the best practices. Thank you.
On something I think we should explore a little bit more, and actually, AIB and ITGC are actually partnering on a project in Lombok, a tourism project. And that is, do you think health infrastructure is going to play a more prominent role in the way that tourism projects are designed going forward now that we've been through this? Do you see some of these designs, maybe you just made sure you had hand washing stations before, but are you thinking about how that might change the way you design a hotel or how people move through certain parts of your tourism project? So maybe Abdulbar, you can lead in with that.
Thank you, Laurel. First of all, we'd like to thank the AIB for having the trust and the belief in us to be their partner to develop the Mandalika, which is the biggest tourism project in Indonesia up to now and will be in the future. So we are in the process of building the infrastructure. But your question was, will health infrastructure play a more prominent role? Yeah, so I guess infrastructure is at the heart of all development. Our experience with the Nusa Dua, the first large-scale destination in Indonesia, was also started with infrastructure. But having said that, we also at that time thought about the health measures. So there was a hospital which was an international international hospital that we provided in the Nusa Dua. Now in the Mandalika, we are thinking even more because right in the middle of our building or our construction, then the COVID happened. So I think one way to look at it is this is kind of a blessing in disguise, so that we still have time to really set the health infrastructure in place, yeah, because we haven't really built too much. Yeah, in fact, the AIP facility is due any time now to start the drawdown. What we've done is we adjusted our infrastructure planning to also incorporate the health infrastructure. Yeah, meaning that to anticipate, God forbid, there's another things like COVID happening. The infrastructure is more geared towards outdoor, having more distances, having more space, and which now we have the luxury of still planning for this one, yeah. And also we put some facility like a Medivac, because this is actually related to our plan to bring crowds through sports tourism by bringing a world-class automotive event. But we also in the process of commissioning a medical facility there, yeah, to as an we call it a mobile medical facility. So I think the health infrastructure will play a more prominent role, but I also want to put more emphasis also on the infrastructure itself, because I think this question is important for us, because we have to show that the infrastructure that we're building right now will be long-lasting, will be of high quality, like the one that we built in Nusa Dua 40 years ago, which is still in tip-top shape right now. And we'd like to repeat this standard that we do. And we also want to put more infrastructure in place for the productive assets, yeah, because the AIB is financing us for the basic infrastructure, but we have to also invest more on the productive asset that can really provide a sustainable source of revenue so that we can sustain our business. Yeah. So I think all in all, health infrastructure will play a more prominent role, especially with what we are experiencing now. And we hope we can anticipate any future health situations so that we'll be better prepared to serve our clients. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, let's hope we've learned a lesson or two from what happened over the last 18 months or so. So no, Rajat, we've heard a bit about, in particular, about the project that we are partnering on with ITDC and Mandalika, but you're looking at a much broader pipeline covering many different countries around Southeast Asia and South Asia and the South Pacific. So as you're seeing project designs coming forward now, is this something that your team is flagging around health infrastructure, or you're seeing more health infrastructure projects themselves coming forward?
Sure, that is absolutely true. This pandemic has been a learning lesson on how underinvested the health infrastructure space was. I mean, just to give some statistics, to meet the SDG goals, typically, developing economy needs to spend about 10% of GDP on social infra, which many of them have not been doing, and this was exposed during the pandemic. So what we see now is there's a refocus amongst various members, and they have started focusing on social infra, including health infrastructure in a big way. As I said, we have a program to assist our members in the health infrastructure as well, and we rolled out the emergency relief facility. We also are looking at having social infrastructure as a key component as we go forward, in addition to the physical infrastructure that we have always been financing. And of course, the effects of these will be seen in the long term, but there is definitely a move forward. Coming to tourism specifically, even there, we see that there is a need that the tourist centers are planned in a methodical way, and people are going to demand that. So the usual haphazard and planned way would not work anymore. They would want more open spaces. They would want better sanitation, water, and so on. So and that is where our expertise comes in, and we would certainly be focusing more on these aspects when we look at infrastructure projects. Thanks, Lauren.
Raj, in one of your earlier comments, you were referring to a project in the Maldives, a waste to energy project. And it makes me think about a lot of the tourism destinations, Indonesia in particular, but Maldives, I mean, these are stunningly beautiful places on earth. And one of the main attractions of why you're attracting visitors is to enjoy absolutely stunning scenery. But of course, having so many people, that has an impact on the beautiful environment, that you obviously, there's a tension that almost exists, because you want to bring more people, because more people means obviously more revenue, more GDP. However, the more people that you bring into these sometimes very fragile ecosystems can end up damaging the very environment that you have. So how are you thinking about managing this tension in, and I would love to hear from you from the environmental point of view, but then afterwards, maybe our next question, we can talk about the people as well who are native to these areas. And maybe let's just talk about the environment, and when you think about the infrastructure and the project you're building, how are you trying to protect that environment, and what are the key things that you're looking for to do that?
Okay, thanks, Laura. That's a good question. Yeah, it is actually a balance between our business side and our need to preserve the environment. Yeah. First of all, because we are not a new company, we've been in business for 47 years, and we have over the years we have come to a realization that you actually have to manage a tourism destination sustainably. Now, having our first project in Bali, 350 hectares, which gets 8% of all foreign incoming of all Indonesia, with 5,400 rooms. One of the things that we realize is that we have to keep a standard of sustainable tourism there, which we've implemented, because by doing so, we're not just getting more people to come, but we also have better relationship with our environment, with our neighbors, because in Bali, not to put down other areas, but some areas become over exploited. Now, because from the beginning, we were adhering to a set of principles that was put down in the original master plan, because this one was a World Bank finance project. And the master plan at that time was very, very geared towards a sustainable tourism. And the good thing that we managed to keep it, just not really changing much. So if you know, in Bali, there is a local belief that you cannot build above a coconut tree. This is true. So if you go to Bali, there's no building higher than 4 stories. Yeah. Although if we want business, we'll put it 5-story, even 8 stories. That will make it double. But by doing this, actually, the tourists like it more, because you have more open air. You don't have so much crowded views, and we were able to charge premium. So as you know, the Nusa Dua is 98% maybe 5-star. Why? Because we managed to keep it this way. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that how we will respond to that question, the balance. I think we're going to do the same thing with Mandalika, maybe even more so, because we have 4 times the area. But in Mandalika, there is no local governance to build higher than a coconut tree. So what we will do is we will have something we call allowable building area. So 1 hectare can be.
Mohon perhatian.
Sorry, I have
Sesuai
to
dengan
stop.
aturan protokol kesehatan dari
That's for those watching. That is the PSA that goes off in Indonesia to remind people of COVID. So not a problem. We'll let that run. Important. And look, these are the times that we're living in. So I think it's almost for those who aren't in Indonesia to know what the Indonesian government is doing to try to remind its citizens about being safe during COVID and what they should be doing to, I guess, respect the local requirements in order to avoid transmission of it. Maybe while we'll come back to you maybe in a minute, maybe Rajat, then you can address the question as it talks about the infrastructure and how you're looking at that. You mentioned that Maldives project, but I mean, this is a really important part of how AIB is in infrastructure. So maybe you can talk about it from your point of view.
Yeah, thanks. No, so, I think we are going to focus on, as I said, on a strategic planned development of an area, which, which takes into account all these concerns. And in line with our mandate, we would typically finance the core infrastructure, which is let's say water supply, sewage, sanitation, roads, and so on. And these should be built to the green standards and climate resilient. So that is one. The second part is, specifically in economies that are significantly dependent on tourism, we have been helping them in putting together a long-term plan to have a more sustainable development. I gave you example of the solid waste management in Maldives, and there's another program in Maldives that we are doing right now that is on the solar electricity. So Maldives is importing liquid fuels for most of its power generation, and which is obviously not environmentally sustainable. So we are putting in place solar systems, and AIB specifically is financing solar battery storage and grid modernization to handle the solar power that will be generated by private producers. So again, it's a very ambitious project, which in one of the islands seeks to replace almost 50% of the capacity by solar capacity. So, and projects like these, I hope, can be replicated on a larger scale in other places as well, to prove that you can have tourism with sustainable development as well. Thanks.
That's a great example. Thank you. And I'm sorry you got cut off a little bit. Maybe building off of that, if there's anything you want to add about you're looking at that for your projects, but then also if you would mind layering in the social dimension and how you work with local communities, because this is obviously as important a part of successful tourism development, not just the environmental, but also the local context.
Yes. If I may, is a question for Rajat or me? Sorry.
For yourself, for you.
Okay. Sorry, if I may pick up where I left off because of the public announcement. I was just getting in the principle first of simply to limit the building area and the building codes. Yeah. The second one is the point that you made, about how next we can coexist with our neighbors, because usually in Indonesia, tourism areas like Nusa Dua with a 5-star hotel with the luxury facilities, they tend to bring people to think that it's an elitist. Yeah. So it has to do with the environment. We really have to also engage them and on a human level. And the good thing in Bali, they have this principle. It's a Hindu principle called Trihita Karana. It means that the relation between humans and God and nature. And this is because Bali is a very unique area in Indonesia. A lot of local customs, a lot of religious Hindu tradition that we have to, which is good, yeah. And this is what you said, is a soft development for environment. And the last one is to pick up what Rajat was saying. I think we're on the same track on this one, because in Mandalika, unlike in Nusa Dua, where we didn't have the luxury or the technology at that time, we managed to supply all the water through desalination. Now we're right next to the sea, it's plentiful, and it doesn't take the water table and it doesn't break the environment because you're taking water from the river or from the ground. Yeah. So this is something that we can do that we weren't able to do in Nusa Dua in 1970 because at that time there was no reverse osmosis technology available. And I think next one for us will be the solar panel. Right now, we're just waiting for the right partner to come along and help us. Because in Indonesia, solar is still relatively new. You know, it's still the GPM, the gas, fuel, and coal, which still dominates now. But I think in the future, the Mandalika will rely on solar power, or even better, because we're in a windy area. When the economy catch up, yeah, we'll go for wind power, or even the wave. We call it the wave-driven power. Yeah. Where you put generators underground because we're next to a big wave beach area. So just in essence that we'll learn from our experience and we'll do better to make the Mandalika the next standard in tourism destination.
That's exciting. So you talked a bit about energy, where you're going to get these sources of energy from, the environmental standards, the social standards. This sort of brings me to, I think we have time for one more question for both, and maybe Raja, you can lead off with this. But obviously, you need a lot of investment to bring this to life. And there are multilateral development banks like AIB who are investing. You mentioned Abdul-Bar World Bank has done investments. But obviously, the private sector and how to bring the private sector into the conversation, into this particular market. Maybe Raja, you can sort of kick us off from what you're seeing when the private sector is coming to the table to potentially invest in a tourism or in a project like Mandalika or others in other markets. What role does infrastructure play in their interest or their likelihood, or what has to be in place in order for them to say, yes, this is a sort of project that we want to get involved in?
Thanks, Laurel. And, for any private sector to come in, the basic infrastructure facilities have to be in place. We are talking, as I said, we have to develop tourism in a planned, phased manner. So, which means that the basic infrastructure, your roads, water supply, sewerage, street lighting, these should be in place, because these would not be developed by the private sector. I mean, they would typically concentrate on developing their own hotel or resort or so on. So, and that is where MDBs can come in, and we can help partner with institutions like IDC to plan out the basic infrastructure, which can then act as a catalyst for the private sector to come in and invest their money. And on the private, which doesn't mean that we will not associate with the private sector if they're willing to do that. For example, if a seawater osmosis plant requires private capital, we'll be happy to partner with the private sector as long as it meets our guidelines. Or let's say there is a opportunity for a solar project being done on IPP basis. Yeah, we can certainly fund that. So there are various ways in which we can help this thing, both on the public sector side and on the private sector side. But the primary aim, I said, just to reiterate, would be to help kickstart the phased development, providing basic infrastructure services. Thank you.
When you're talking to investors, what are some of the key elements that they're raising to you to say we want to make sure this is done and done with quality or to a certain standard or sort of way? You could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, just want to continue the train of thought that Raja was saying. It's true that the MDBs are there to actually start the whole thing. Yeah. So it's actually the beginning where you have the core or basic infrastructure, which the private sector will most likely not meet their investment horizon yet. But once it's built, this infrastructure, it's much easier for us to attract the private sector. And it's proven that right after we got the facility from the AIB, we have another facility from the local bank, which is it's a government owned, but it's actually catering more on the private sector on the export one. Yeah. So we were able to secure 89 million consequently, after the AIP facility come in, to build a hotel and some of the road that we use for the circuit. Yeah. So I think without the MDB coming in first, it would be difficult for us to attract these investors. Now, your last question was how do we leverage this to get investors to come in? Yeah, we were fortunate to conclude a deal with Vinci. Vinci is a French infrastructure toll road operator and airport operator company, which is huge, and they are our anchor tenant. And I think that was the result of the infrastructure that we told them that will be built. Yeah, that we convinced them that the infrastructure will be coming in place. So it's much easier to get world-class investors and local investors. We have 7 already signed up to build hotels, although as you know, the COVID kind of restricted somewhat. Yeah, but before COVID, we were on a really good progress to get investors and even guests to come in, although the facilities are being built. Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to mention is that for the solar cell and for the reverse osmosis, we also engage the private sector or investors. We have one for the solar for the reverse osmosis, but we are still looking for either partnering or financing to realize the solar power. Yeah? Because we're fortunate because Lombok has 9 months of sun days because it is a tropical area. So the wind is we've done a study and is suitable for wind power as well. So I think the next step after this infrastructure is rolled out and the hotels start, before the hotels are finished, we have to think about this. And I think that's one area that we can still certainly work with AIP, especially on the commercial side, yeah, because this is more commercial investment. Thank you.
There's a project pipeline for you there, Rajat. With all the time we have for today, I had so many other questions that weren't able to get to, but I want to thank both of you for joining me. Really interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Lots of work to do, but thank you both.
Thank you, Laurel. Thank you, Rajat. Nice talking.
Thanks, Laurel.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye-bye.